sheets are 30 by 40. And so this is actually a half sheet. And this is 20 by 30, which is like the size of a regular piece of watercolor paper. And it's $20 for a whole sheet. So it's really about the same price as 300-pound paper. Because a half a sheet is $10. So, you know, I think it's so worth it because and you can always gesso over it. You know, yeah, I think we all have a few of those. I also like to, when I'm getting close to being done with the painting, I like to put what I call arbitrary colors in it, which means colors that don't necessarily belong in a portrait or whatever, but very often I use turquoise or green or blue around the eyes. If you look at the man there, he's got a lot of blue right around his eyes. You actually have a lot of vascular stuff around your eyes, and so it really, my old nursing days talking, but you really do have a lot of reflected color. And skin also reflects color beautifully, and the darker the skin, the more reflective it is. So if you look at somebody that has very, very dark skin and they've got like a red shirt on, this will be absolutely bright red because their skin is so much more reflective. Caucasian skin, after you paint a darker skin, whether it's Latin or any other kind of skin, going back to painting wimpy Minnesotan Caucasian skin is pretty boring. And carmine. And I'm going to paint his gums in here. And they're going to look too pink, but don't worry. And I do this even on my regular watercolor board. What you want to do is you want to paint his teeth, the spaces between his teeth, I just got paint on me, in whatever the flesh tone is. And I literally paint the teeth like he'll almost look like a pumpkin or something, because I'm literally going to outline his teeth. I know it looks ridiculous, but trust me. Now I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go back and soften it out. And there'll be just enough of the spaces between his teeth that they really will look like teeth. And that works even on regular watercolor paper. If you put flesh tone in the tooth cracks, in the spaces between the teeth, let it dry, and then go back and soften it out. It'll look like pearly white teeth. So while that's drying, I'm going to give him some lips, and then we'll do his eyes. That's too red. I want his lips to be a little more plummy. So I'm just mixing up my ultramarine blue in with my carmine there. Because his lips are kind of reddish brown. So I'm just going to kind of put in
that teeth thing wouldn't work on just regular watercolor paper.
It does. It's just that you have to then soften it with a bristle brush. Go back and soften it back out with a little scrubber. Now I want to put a little bit of dark under here a little bit, because he's got a little skin showing there. Okay, now let's do his eyes while that dries. The first thing I'm going to do is give him pupils. Or I'm sorry, irises. I'm going to paint the color of his eye in first. And I'm going to paint everything except for the highlight. I'm going to paint the whole thing in burnt sienna, with the exception of the highlight. I'm getting paint all over my arm, but that's all right. I lost a little bit of that highlight, but that's all right. Now I'm going to give him a little eyeliner, because I'll soften it back out. So I'm just going to kind of outline his eye here and give him a little tear duct. And we'll do this one. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry a little bit. While that's drying, I'm going to give him a pupil. You don't ever want to paint eyelashes, so to speak. You may want to paint a little shape, but you don't want to paint an actual eyelash. Now I'm giving him a pupil, but I'm also bringing it up to the top because the eyelid is going to cast a shadow on the iris of his eye. And your pupil usually runs up under your eyelid. So there's his eyes. Now we're going to let that dry a little bit and soften it. While that's drying, pardon me, I just got paint all up my arm. Okay. While that's drying, I'm going to soften his teeth. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. And I have a little, this is actually an acrylic filbert. It's soft, it's not like a bristle brush, but it's a filbert, like an oil painting brush. And I use this for all hot press board. You don't want to soften with a bristle brush on it, you want to use a softer brush. So I use this little filbert, you can use a little flat. And I'm going to soften out his teeth. And I may find that, I want his teeth to have a little glaze over them or whatever, but this is going to make them look like teeth. And I'm just running this brush down the center of the teeth so that I'm softening out the edges. And it also kind of pulls a little bit of color out onto the tooth.
So are you just going over the lines now, or
No, I'm going
the center of the tooth?
on the center of the teeth.
Okay.
That one got a little dark. Okay. Now I'm going to lighten his gums a little bit. He's got a little bit of gingivitis going on here. Still looks a little bit pink. I'm going to get it a little bit more here. Okay, now we're going to soften his lips out here because I don't want any harsh stuff on his lips. I want them to be softer looking. And almost everybody has a light line around the edge of their lips. People with nice big full lips, like he has, quite often have it around their bottom lip. Most people have it around the top lip right here, but almost everybody has a light edge around their lips. I don't have much lip, but I give it. Now I'm going to add a little color back in above that lip, and we're going to soften his eyes, and then I'm going to stand him up and see what you think. Now I probably would play with this a little bit more and do some detail-y stuff. I don't really have his nose popped out right here the way I would like. But I'm going to soften his eyes, and then we'll see what you think. I think it's dry, yeah. And I'm just, when I soften it, I just kind of take the tip of my soft brush here and just kind of blend it in so that it isn't a stark white eye. Needs a little color under that hat there.
Very nice.
Oh, thank you. Soften it out just a little bit. Because you always have a little gray, in the corners. Now, I would play with this more, but I want you to kind of get the idea. But
Wow.
should I stand up? It's really an easy way to do teeth. And And it always works. You just line them with the skin tone, whatever the skin tone is, and then soften the back. Opaque turquoise color. And I always use an opaque color for this kind of thing, but you do have to put it on last because you can't, and I'm going to soften this a little bit, don't worry. You can't paint on top of it or you're going to turn it into mud. So this has to be like the final thing that you put on it. But it will absolutely bring it to life.